The Lebanese have seen it all, from civil war to the 2019 protests demanding an end to revolving door politics, from the 2020 port of Beirut explosion that exposed the tragic consequences of nepotism to Israel's 2024 operation to neutralize longtime foe Hezbollah. Now Israel's ground forces are back to again take on the Tehran-backed foe. Thus, Lebanon finds itself the second front of the month-long war launched against Iran. We'll ask about a return to life during wartime in Lebanon, the 1.2 million displaced, the UN peacekeepers killed or injured, and how this nation can break with a half-century of armed factions that act sometimes as laws unto themselves. That depends in part on how regional powers fare during the current conflict. For more than half a century, they've often used Lebanon as the vacant lot where they settle scores by proxy. But it also depends on the Lebanese themselves to see whether the attempts by a younger generation to go beyond confession and clan can finally bear fruits. Today in the France 24 debate, can Lebanon keep it together? With us, Dal Mawad, Paris correspondent for Al Arabi TV, the author of All She Lost. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Francois.
Nadim Houri, executive director of the Arab Reform Initiative think tank. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
And from Beirut, journalist Jad Sharour, spokesperson for the Samir Kassir Foundation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
On the go, you can listen to the show wherever podcasts are streamed. Yeah, 1 month on, there are those who flee and there are those who stay. France 24's Mehdi Nayouet and Olivia Bizot went to southern Lebanon near the front line and filed this report.
South of the Litani River, a rare lifeline. We follow this humanitarian convoy reaching those trapped by the war. The charity L'Œuvre d'Orient assists residents of all faiths who stay behind, driven by the fear that if they leave, they won't be able to return.
We try to support those who stay because, in reality, they can no longer work. Most people here are farmers. They have no access to their fields and the roads are dangerous. We're able to do this today as part of a convoy because we're accompanying the Vatican ambassador.
Before the March escalation, 700,000 people lived south of the Blue Line. Today, with 1/10 of Lebanon's territory now a restricted military zone, the landscape has fallen almost silent.
We refuse to leave our homes, no matter what happens. Even if Israel invades and creates a security zone and encircles the region, none of us can start over from scratch.
In this town, fewer than 400 families remain.
The problem is that the 2024 war was completely different. Today, the danger is greater. Back then, the war was confined to the southern region. Now it affects all of Lebanon. There's no safety anywhere.
UN peacekeepers and the Lebanese army secure these routes. They notify the Israeli military of these trucks' itineraries in advance, ensuring they aren't targeted by the ongoing shelling.
We are 10 kilometers away from the Israeli border, and what the locals are calling for beyond humanitarian aid is the end to this war, which they say is not their own.
Under the hum of distant strikes and constant drones, the community unloads as fast as possible.
Leave it in the classroom.
This is so we can keep everything organized. Thank God the Lebanese army is helping us, and the young people from the village are helping too.
In less than 4 weeks, the association has reached nearly 20,000 people. But only a few kilometers away, Israeli strikes continue to scar the skies of southern Lebanon.
That report by Mehdi Nayouet and Olivia Bizot, who joins us live from Beirut. Olivia, can you update us on the latest from southern Lebanon?
Yes, well, many areas in southern Lebanon are under constant and very heavy bombardment. Israel's defense minister reiterated today that villages in southern Lebanon near the border with Israel will be completely destroyed. He said that it would be a Gaza-like destruction. He also reiterated that the hundreds of thousands of people who've been displaced from those villages will not be able to return until Israelis in the north of the country feel safe. Now, this is a discourse in Israel that keeps coming back, and it's making Lebanese people feel terrified that these temporary evacuations will become permanent. This is being reinforced by the fact that many bridges across the Litani River have been under heavy bombardment. This is isolating communities in the south. It's isolating around 150,000 people, according to the UN. And as you could see in that report, it's making it incredibly difficult for those communities to access basic necessities, healthcare, food, and water. A lot of Lebanese people that I've been speaking to have told me they're terrified that history is just repeating itself, because about a third of Lebanon was under Israeli occupation between 1982 and 2000, and it was that 18-year occupation that gave birth to Hezbollah in the first place. Now, today, images and videos circulating on social media also show the Lebanese army moving out of those towns. So increasingly, Lebanese people are feeling completely abandoned.
And we saw in that report people on the move. There's 1.2 million by all estimates inside of Lebanon right now. We heard the mayor of that town tell you how this is different from 2024. You were able to experience firsthand this Tuesday what it means to be on the move.
Yes, that's right, Francois. Already here in Beirut, the displacement can be felt everywhere. The city feels almost like a giant car park. There are cars parked on the sidewalks, in public spaces, and these cars belong to people who just don't know where to go. The UN has warned that 94% of shelters across the country are completely overcrowded, and this displacement is also having a horrific impact on access to healthcare. This morning, my colleagues Melina Ué, Ashraf Abid and I spent time with Hani, who's an 8-year-old boy. We spent time with him and his family. They're from the southern city of Tyre that has been under constant bombardment since this latest conflict broke out. They've been displaced to a school in Saida, which is about 40 kilometers south of Beirut. And Hani has leukemia. He's been under treatment for the last 3 years, and in order to be fully cured, he needs another 6 months of treatment. But in order for that to be able to happen, he needs to receive the treatment every week, and that's incredibly difficult. There aren't hospitals that offer the treatment in Saida, so he needs to make the trip, the journey to Beirut once a week, but his family no longer have a car. They don't have an income anymore, so that situation is incredibly difficult, and his family, as you can imagine, are absolutely terrified for his survival. We spoke to surgeons in the hospital in Beirut where he tries to receive this treatment, and the surgeons told us that a leukemia treatment costs about $70,000 a year per person, and in a country which was already under great economic challenges before this conflict broke out, the doctors warned it's going to make it even more challenging, and it's going to have a huge impact on these people's survival. Now, we filmed a report following Hani and telling his story, and you'll be able to watch that report in the next few days in France 24's 4 languages.
Olivier Bizot, many thanks for that live update here in the France 24 debate. Jad Sharour, a lot to pick up on in what you just heard there. Let's start with that essential question, if you will. To evacuate or not to evacuate if you're from southern Lebanon? Again, it's different from 2024.
So yeah, basically the situation is different. It's much harder. I think that today there's a lot of questions about if fleeing is an optional, and it has a lot of meanings. So basically, as you know, the south of Lebanon is not only one pattern. It's like cosmopolitan of religions and sects. So there's Sunnis, there's Shias, there's Christians. And till this moment, some of the Christians villages and Sunnis villages, they are saying that we should protect our south, we should stay at our homes, we should ask the state to let the army, the Lebanese army, stay with us. But 1 hour ago, one of the push notifications we got it as Lebanese on our phones that some of the Christians villages, they are doing protests because the Lebanese army has an official statement to flee their villages. And this means that the Israeli is going to invade these villages. For me, this is very a critical situation because we want to say that this South has or we need one future for the South is to let the people go back to their homes, whether they are Sunnis or Shias or Christians. But with everything is escalating, I think this is very hard. The only one point till now might be not to be fled is the Arqub region, which is like 5 or 6 villages on the borders, which are like Druze, Christians and Sunnis. This situation might be changed in the coming hours. Till now, we don't know how the Israelis gonna escalate this till tomorrow. We don't know if the state gonna recreate new checkpoints for the Lebanese army, where some of the Lebanese are stay there in their homes.
Yeah, just briefly, Jad, explain for our viewers what the calculus is when people decide to stay.
So there's a lot of reasons so people can take such decisions because like in the last wave of this war in 2024, some of the villages that they were fled and they were not Hezbollah affiliated, they come back to their homes, but for their destroyed homes, because some of the Hezbollah militant uses their homes as like banks or like to rest or to fire from their homes, because they use it as a tactic that these villages has nothing to do with Hezbollah, but they use it. For now, they like as lesson learned, no, we don't want to flee our homes. We need to stay there, and we need to say for all the world that we are Lebanese in this region, in the south, and we have the right to stay in our home. First message is for the Israeli invasion that this is our country and this is our land. Second a message for Hezbollah that you cannot use our land for your tactics to defend Iran. So I think this is legit for the Lebanese who have the luxury to stay in their homes. But the question is how much the state can support such a decision, because if the Lebanese army started to flee these villages, then we are terribly leaving the Lebanese for unknown future, whether they will stay as like in the south with no aid, or they have to flee to Beirut and to north of Beirut.
Tal Mawad, it's awfully crowded south of the Litani River right now. You have the Israeli army that's pushing in. You have Hezbollah fighters. You have the Lebanese army, as has been stated. You have United Nations peacekeepers. What should the latter two be doing?
So if we're talking about the Lebanese army and the UN peacekeepers, they work together, they work in tandem, but the Lebanese army is supposed to be everywhere in that area, according to the ceasefire deal agreement that was reached in 2024, but also according to Resolution 1701, which was reached after the 2006 war. The Lebanese army should be there, and Hezbollah should be disarmed. Clearly today, it's not the case. What we're witnessing today, though, and which is dangerous, and Jad is referring to, is that the army is retreating from some of these villages where it was supposed to protect those who stay. And my worry, Francois, is that we're witnessing forced displacement, which is a clear violation of international humanitarian law. By retreating, they might be forcing these people to make a different choice and to leave. But people won't leave because, as we've heard the defense minister of Israel reiterate again, not only will they not be allowed to go back, but he clearly said that this ground invasion and the occupation south of Litani will stay beyond the end of military operations. And this is what we are worried about, that this part of Lebanon will be lost for a long time. It will be occupied long term. The UNIFIL peacekeeping mission has been there since 1978, since the first Israeli invasion. Your reporter spoke of 18 years of occupation. It's actually 22, because there was a first invasion up to the Litani River in 78. Their role is mostly to report, to monitor, to support the Lebanese army with its mission to spread around the area. They were helping them after the ceasefire agreement also with disarmament. They help civilians also evacuate, so civilian protection. But they are not there to enter into any combat. And the targeting of these peacekeeping troops, which we've seen recently, is also a violation of international humanitarian law. They should not be targets. And they've been caught in the crossfire between Israel and Hezbollah. And I also think that it's not just that they're trapped. We've heard today from the permanent representative of France at the UN Security Council that the French unit was deliberately targeted. There was a provocation. They were injured. We know that some Indonesian soldiers were also killed. That to say, the UNIFIL troops are supposed to have to help the Lebanese army spread sovereignty. Like they're there to reiterate and help the Lebanese army control this area. But today it's not the case. The peacekeepers cannot keep peace because there's no peace, so they're powerless and constrained. And the Lebanese army doesn't have the capacity to defend Lebanon, to push back the Israeli invasion. We're seeing them retreat now. And there are a lot of question marks as to why they are doing that now and today, when people have asked for their protection. And the expectation in a normal country, Francois, would be that the army would be there to push back any foreign invasion and to protect your boundaries, and your border. But it's not the case today. The army is not doing that. It's not capable of doing that.
Yeah, and again, a lot of concern at the United Nations after that statement by the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, talking about the destruction of homes to come, an occupation that would last beyond the war with Iran. We could show you live pictures from Jerusalem. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is due to speak, will carry his remarks when they happen. Meanwhile, as Dalal was mentioning, we've had 3 UN peacekeepers killed in 24 hours in South Lebanon, all of them of Indonesian nationalities, 2 of them by a roadside blast. The previous date was a shelling. No word there from the UN on who's responsible. We have France's foreign minister, as Dalal was mentioning, calling out serious incidents targeting the French contingent, Nadim Houri, this near its Nakura headquarters on the coast, a deliberate targeting. Well, again, what should be the response of the United Nations? What should be the response of France?
I mean, this is not the first time UNIFIL is targeted. In 1996, there was a massacre when Israel attacked a UNIFIL base, and actually 103 Lebanese civilians sheltering there were killed. This has been a long pattern. And to be honest, the problem is Israeli impunity has sort of pushed Israel to think it can treat UNIFIL, it can treat the Lebanese army, it can treat Lebanese civilians as it sees fit. And even their own Minister of Defense is using the Gaza comparison. The challenge today is you have a 3-way race in what's happening. There's a race between Israel's vision of security, and you talked about it. I call it the yellow line doctrine. They want to create a buffer zone a la Gaza, what they've been doing as well in Syria since the fall of the regime, take more land, empty it out, annex it possibly, and maybe settle it, because we know the settlement movement is getting stronger and stronger within Israel. You have what Hezbollah wants. Hezbollah wants to go back to the 2006 agreement, where basically they managed to have some sort of asymmetrical deterrence with the Israeli army, but that would leave them as sort of the key actor at the border. And there is what the Lebanese government, the Lebanese army, and a large majority of Lebanese want.
A large majority.
A large majority. There were some opinion polling before the actual conflict that showed more than 80% of the Lebanese wanted to see a monopoly of state arms. So, even a significant part of the Shia community wanted to see Hezbollah disarmed, but they wanted to see, what they want is to see a sovereign Lebanon. And actually, they want to also feel safe, because we always talk about the security and safety of the Israelis. What about the security and safety of the Lebanese that have been suffering since 1978? The problem is today, in this sort of three-way race, to go back to your question about France, France is one of the few big international powers today to support the Lebanese government. But they don't have much leverage. And unfortunately, the US, which was supposed to be partners with France during the ceasefire agreement, they've decided to support Israel and to tell Israel, do whatever you want to do that.
Yeah, because they had a special envoy, Tom Barak, who was making trips back and forth. We haven't heard much of him, right?
Well, they've gone silent. They basically said Israel will do it. But it's also very interesting because, during the ceasefire agreement, and Israel said, well, the Lebanese army is not going fast enough. But the actual envoys from the U.S. First, there was Morgan Ortagus, and then Tom Barak. Summer of last year, they were basically saying, actually, Lebanon is doing a lot. They were going on monitoring visit. Throughout the summer, there are statements from both of them saying, Morgan Ortagus said the Lebanese army has done more in a few months than they have done in 15 years, right? And suddenly in November, for whatever reason, Lindsey Graham visits Lebanon, and
this is the U.S. senator.
This is the U.S. senator, and suddenly they're like, "Oh, Lebanon is not doing enough. Lebanon is not doing enough." And the Lebanese army, which is actually supported by the U.S., the Lebanese commander was supposed to go to Washington, and his trip got canceled at the last second in November.
All right. On Monday, we heard Lebanon's president, Joseph Aoun, vowing that, quote, the hand that threatens civil peace will be cut off, adding that security services are taking firm measures to prevent any security breaches through arrests and the confiscation of weapons. These are remarks clearly that seem to be targeting Hezbollah and its Iran backers. But how much do Aoun's words weigh? The Lebanese government expelling Iran's ambassador. He gave him till last Sunday to pack his bags. However, Tehran insists that he's staying put. The foreign ministry adding that the embassy in Beirut remains operational. Difficult to stare down Israel, difficult to stare down Iran as well, Dalal Mawad.
Yeah, Lebanon has been caught in these different regional conflicts and between these different powers for as long as it has existed, maybe since the 16th century or so. And to be honest, our sovereignty is constantly being challenged. And I also blame the Lebanese for that. We've called for interference throughout history. We all consider each other as minority communities in need of protection and in need of help. What happened with the Iran ambassador is an important step that the government has taken. It's unprecedented.
Even if Iran ignored it.
The problem is that it ignored it. It shows us that it's disrespecting Lebanon's sovereignty. But the question, Francois, is what tools does the government have today to go further with this decision? Can it remove the residency of the ambassador? It cannot forcefully expel. There are, I looked at international law, they don't have these prerogatives. But it was a step forward, and it showed us that actually, Iran is not respecting this government and its decisions and its sovereignty, and it's doing as it pleases. The same way as Hezbollah a few weeks ago launched 6 rockets without asking anyone, dragging us into a war, most of the Lebanese did not want and did not ask for, regardless of the fact that Israel had been violating the ceasefire again and again, regardless of the fact that maybe Israel had plans in the south of Lebanon. This is not a war that we wanted. But I want to go back to Nadim's point, which is, again, Israel's impunity and history in Lebanon, because people forget that we have a long history with Israel, Israel's war, and Israel's occupation. And my worry today is that if Israel occupies the south of Lebanon, people need protection. People want to know there's someone who's going to protect them and defend them. This is actually going to reinforce Hezbollah, and it's going to maybe give it legitimacy to exist and to
even if Iran's
remain
weakened, even if there's even regime change.
I am not
Tehran.
sure today we can talk about a weakening of Iran. What evidence do we have? They're still holding everything together. This war is still ongoing. And I'll tell you this. History teaches us that these wars of aggression on a nation, actually, they make the hardliners even stronger. And I think the political shift in Iran internally is to the benefit of these hardliners and in the Islamic Republic, and not the other way around. So it remains to be seen. I don't know, but it's something to keep in mind. Occupation breeds injustice and breeds violence, and this is what we've been witnessing throughout history, Francois, with what's happening in Palestine. Is Israel's occupation of Palestinian land is at the root cause of everything. It's not the end; it's the beginning of all of this.
Jad Sharour, you heard there Dalal saying at least it's a change of tone on the part of the Lebanese presidency. You heard Nadim Houri stating that there are polls that suggest that 80% of the Lebanese would like to see the monopoly of force and weapons be only in the hands of the government, of the state. Is that how it feels tonight where you're sitting in Beirut?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with Dalal and with Nadim. Definitely. The problem now is not only like the military act and what's going on the borders. Now we have three narratives in Lebanon, and I feel we are not just stepping in a violent war. We are just losing our social contract. It's already collapsed. There's people in Lebanon who said, like as Nadim mentioned, that we want the state. We want to be independent. We want the state to protect us and to act as, to know what is our foreign policy, for example, what kind of rules we do with the neighboring countries. We need this as Lebanese. We need our sovereignty. But in the same time, with everything is going on the borders, like the violence is creating much more narratives in the Lebanese streets. For example, there's people saying that we should cut everything right now and we should do peace with Israel. Maybe this is the solution so we can go back to our homes. Others are saying, no, we should say that Israeli regime or military act is very violent, is against everything, and they are killing us. We should protect Hezbollah. Or we should, for example, whenever we say that Hezbollah is a militia and he's taking our south for unprecedented future, we should say the same thing for the Israeli, 1-over-1. And then others would say, like, we don't have any options, we have to support Hezbollah. I believe at the end of the day, there is no resolution until we believe as citizens that there's a nation called Lebanon, and we have to believe in the state, and the state should formalize a new brand for it. What is our foreign policy towards Syria, towards Palestine, towards Israel, how we control our state, how we support the army. And we need this not only as an internal homework, we need this from the international community.
Hang on, Jad. Are you suggesting that there's still, in 2026, a lot of people in Lebanon who have serious doubts over the legitimacy of the Lebanese state?
it's not like it's not in that way, but they are saying that what are our options till now if we are saying still the Israeli is bombing our land and Hezbollah is still bombing our land. Like people like me, like Dalal, like everyone who's dreaming about a state, an independent state, is asking this question. I believe in this government. I believe with a new brand for Lebanon. But on the ground, still I see Hezbollah is killing me. Israel is invading my country. What is the resolution?
It's been, Nadim Houri, more than 5 years since you bought a plane ticket back for Beirut. There was protests in the streets. It was December of 2019. And at the time, it was kind of the talk we're hearing on this in this discussion right now.
No, the long arc is that there is a national desire to build a state. I think the Lebanese
are we still in this deadlock where it's kind of revolving door politics? You have the March 8th coalition on the one side, the March 14th coalition on the other, and some factions switch sides from time to time, but they rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yes and no. So Lebanon has been moving away from that model, and it's not linear. And we saw one big spurt forward in 2019. We saw some step backwards, some step forward. The problem is the structural violence in the neighborhood is very, very intense. I mean, this is a country that went through a mini revolution in 2019, the port explosion, a massive financial collapse, a war in 2024, and now another full-fledged war with 20-25% of the population that's been displaced. And I fully agree with Jad. Today, there's sort of the external danger, right? That's Israel threatening and actually invading and threatening to occupy for a long time Lebanese territory. And we know that when Israel occupies, it takes many, many years, huge efforts, huge sacrifices for them to decide to leave. You also have Lebanon was slowly trying to kind of rebuild itself, reconnect, because it has broken politics, because, yes, we have failed to get rid of these sectarian warlords. And now a lot of people are left with very difficult questions. I mean, Dalal was just saying, we all want the Lebanese army to be deployed. And in villages that have not seen fighting yet, the Lebanese army is being ordered to retreat. By whom? Under what pressure? We don't know. But so they're being, and if they leave, most likely many of these villagers will have to leave. Families will have to make difficult decisions. Hezbollah has decided, against the will of the majority of the Lebanese, and definitely against the decision of an actual government that they actually have 2 seats in, to wage war in Israel and to align itself perfectly behind Iran. How do we break this spell? For me, the only way forward is to go back, is to actually build that state. It's an incremental process. There's actually been steps forward going. I'm not one of those who say nothing's been done over the years. The army, had actually gained operational control of most of southern Lebanon just a few months ago. Not perfect control, but you cannot dislodge a group like Hezbollah after 40 years overnight, when actually Israel is committing ceasefire violations every day. But it was actually on the right track. What can be done today? I think what can be done today is going back to a ceasefire, going back to what Lebanon has offered Israel, which is we enter into negotiations on the basis of the 1949 Armistice Agreement, which, by the way, when Lebanon was a bit more sovereign, guaranteed security between 1949 till the end of the 1960s. That's the longest period of peace along that border. So go back to that model. There's actually mechanisms with US troops, French troops, UNIFIL troops to monitor the peace. Actually, Israel talks about the safety of its northern inhabitants. During the ceasefire, they were actually safe. Lebanon respected its part of the deal. Even Hezbollah respected part of the deal. So give the time so that actually allow us to do the political process. And some important decisions were made in the last year. A decision to actually, that Hezbollah's military wing has been now classified as illegal in Lebanon, a decision to disarm Hezbollah. This will be a long process. But what is the alternative? If Israel thinks that doing what they're doing right now, reoccupying the south, is going to give them long-term security, they haven't learned a thing from history.
Yeah. So 2024, it's the middle of the war in Gaza. There's these exploding pagers that take out a lot of the leadership of Hezbollah. Its top leader, Hassan Nasrallah, is assassinated. How degraded is Hezbollah in 2026?
We were surprised, Francois. Just want to recall that in one night, Hezbollah sent around 200 missiles into Israel. I think the past year they were respecting the ceasefire agreement, as Nadim rightly said so, but they were reorganizing, buying time, moving around, and somehow managed to stand up again. We know that it was a heavy blow, what happened in 2024. We were all caught by surprise, but it's clear that they still have military capabilities. They are supporting Iran in this war. I mean, they got involved only when Khamenei was killed. They did
That's
not.
on day one.
Yeah, but despite all the violations of Israel before, they stayed aside.
So what does that tell you?
When they got involved, even some Lebanese politicians were surprised. They thought they would not. That told us that Lebanon's interests are not their first priority, because they knew that, yes, they sent these 6 rockets, but we know that Israel's retaliation is disproportionate. It was gonna hurt Lebanon, and it's hurting Lebanon tremendously. So this was suicidal, Francois, and they're taking the entire country with them with no end in sight. We don't know where things are going, to be honest. And I think most Lebanese today want peace in general, but they're also, what kind of peace do we want? Is it at the expense of occupation, losing a part of our land? I don't think so. Is it a peace where, the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon is respected, where we have a strong state in every, sense? Yes. And then I think Lebanese people today don't just doubt the legitimacy of the state, they doubt the sovereignty of our state. All sides accuse the government of there's American, Saudi interference, or there's Iranian interference. We know the Iranians were very influential before. But I think there's a current inside of Lebanon, there's a third way which I belong to that really wants my country to be sovereign. We don't want those either. It's time we are really independent and sovereign. That's our only way out. And I think the main problem is lack of accountability. We have not seen any justice for any crimes committed in Lebanon, Francois, whether it's by the political establishment internally or by Israel. And I think that's what Lebanon needs. We need accountability also to be able to move forward. There are just too many grudges. There's trauma on top of trauma. People have survived just so much. I'm very worried. The tensions are very high today. Jad was talking about, what people
culture
are
of vendetta,
saying.
which has lasted centuries. How do you break it? How do you break that culture of grudges?
You work on real truth and reconciliation. This has never happened after the Civil War. To me, the Civil War never ended, Francois. And today, let's take the Beirut explosion. I am hopeful that at least for one crime that's been committed, we will see some sort of justice. Just yesterday, the lead judge finished his investigation. After 5 years and a half, there are 70 people who were charged. Are we going to see any accountability? That would be a beginning. And then we need to build a nation. I disagree. I think it's not just about building a state. I think the nation is not there. We all have a different vision still and a different identity of what we want from Lebanon. How do we envision it in the region among its neighbors? There are questions that have still not been settled to this day, and that's very dangerous.
For the news site Daraj, you explained to Jad Sharhour why, when the fighting started on February the 28th, you decided to take the plane home from the United States. We began this program discussing the situation in the south. What did you discover when you landed in Beirut this time?
I mean, as if someone like just clicked like rewind back to 2024. Empty streets, destroyed buildings. People are just taking the streets and like sleeping in the streets under the rain. And even if I'm against Hezbollah, but I'm asking myself, why would we accept such a reality? Why we would live in 2026 in this type of life? I was in the United States discussing political communication, technology, blockchains, AI and everything. And in one night, I came back to my country to see militia is taking over the state by firing a war at our borders. I cannot go back to my village. My child is afraid, and all the children, because of the sonic bombs and the bombing and the destroyed buildings around the world, instead of going to kindergarten, looking for their future. I don't know if I can have a full-time to work from my home or from the office. It's chaotic. We are in a very crazy moment, and it's 2026. Instead of building a country, looking for technology, developing our future, investing in education, we are just looking for what we can do in the next hour. We know nothing about our future.
And
it's terrible. Really, it's terrible.
And tell us, inside of your village, what news do you have?
So my village is one of the villages where people decided to stay in. So we have now around 60 families staying in the village. The military, the Lebanese army has 2 checkpoints around my village. He fled one of them, and he stayed in one of in the other. But we don't know what's the next steps, because the update was like 2-3 hours ago that we have the same situation on other Christians' villages, and the army decided to flee all the checkpoints. I'm afraid that this scenario will be applicable to the side of my village of the Lebanese south. And if this happens, means that the Israeli had updated their plan by occupying the villages not only 5 kilometers or 7 kilometers. I think they will be around like 10 kilometers till 15 kilometers. Geographically, I'm speaking.
And that's the situation this Tuesday. Just one quick question. How are they getting supplies? How often are they coming in?
So basically, I can say one thing why we believe in this government, because for the first time, we see ministries are doing their best to support with supplies for people who fled their homes or they stayed in their villages. And the mechanism of the new government is totally different from Mikati's government in 2024. Now you can, if you feel that there's a mistake, you can find it and you can fix it. There's a very professional mechanism that a lot of ministers is working on. If there's one thing to shed lights on positively on what's happening on the ground, that this government knows how to aid their people. And this scenery was not something familiar to us in the previous governments. But still, we need a lot of actions to be done by the state to form how we can end the military act, and to ask anyone without repression, anyone, if you want to play politics, be a political party, you cannot be a militia. This is the message was for Hezbollah at the creation of the new government. They have 2 seats. They agreed for this. Before forming the new government, they agreed to the ceasefire. We should go back to the ceasefire. If Hezbollah wants something from Lebanon, he should act as a political party, not as a militia, as the other political parties. But I don't see this is coming. acknowledged all his people and all the government that he's doing this for Iran, not for Lebanon.
And we heard Dalal Mawad expressing the worry that there would be an emboldening of hardliners go if this war continues. I want to thank you, Dalal, for being with us. I want to thank Nadim Khouri and Jad Sharour for being with us from Beirut. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.